Hey, thanks for taking the trip into Austin. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to be here and talk with y'all.
That's what happens. Sometimes you got to just slide into the DMs on Instagram and good things will happen.
I know.
But it's funny, you've been on Harry and I's list to have on the show for a while, actually. And I was telling you a little bit before we recorded, but um, I first came around to your content and Club Homebodies in 2020. I was living in New York, and then the city got shut down, so I moved back to New Jersey with my parents, and there really weren't any gyms that were open. And the girl that I was dating at the time was doing Homebodies and a big fan of Remi's, and she was like, "Look, I think you should really try this workout program. It's really minimalist, only requires like a dumbbell, and the workouts just smoke you." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." I was kind of doing more like bodybuilder style stuff at the time, and then I did the first workout and just absolutely got crushed. I was in my parents' basement just sweating all over the carpet, and I was like, "This is incredible." But really, that's how I got introduced to your content and did Homebodies probably for about 6 months and just had such a great experience. And then just started doing more digging on you. And one of the things that I think I'm learning about as I get older is I think I just have an affinity towards people that have a lot of intention and purpose behind their life. And I really feel that with you in terms of the way that you approach nutrition, your workouts, just kind of the way you approach your life. So we're just excited to dig into it. But I just wanted to say thank you for the impact that you've had on me.
Yes, sir. It's real. It's great for me because it gives me some sort of purpose behind what I do, other than just exercising for my work, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. What was sort of the origin of Homebodies? Where did that get born out of?
Well, it was legitimately born out of the COVID lockdowns in the city. I At the time I was working in executive protection in the city, and so I was wearing a suit and tie and you know guarding you know high net worth individuals and celebrities and whatnot at events, and all that came to a standstill, and so I wasn't working no more, and I'm still exercising every day, and so was Remi with me, and so we figured, what the hell, why not share this with people and do it with people, and you know, just like anything, it started out just going live, and we did it for free for probably 6 or 8 months, just free every
Wow.
single day for free. It started out, the first one, maybe like 20 or 30 people showed up and got on, but every single day a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more showed up, and then we started implementing these uh, deck of cards workouts, which is kind of a big staple for us, which was my, like, in the military, that was a big thing for us. Like, we're floating around on a boat or in a combat zone, we'd use a deck of cards and get creative with our workouts. It's old school. And so I started doing deck of cards workouts, and that's when it really kind of exploded. People started getting into our workouts with us, and we had a pretty good following from there, and we decided might as well, establish this as a full-on fitness program.
What's really cool about that too is I know that you're an Illinois guy, you were in the Marines, in the military, and then you were a super high level CrossFit competitor, right? I think you were like one of the fittest men in the West when you were competing in the regionals.
I was a nobody. I'm, I'm, I was the, I would say I was probably the lowest tier of the elite competitive athletes. I was like at the very bottom of the barrel, but
Yeah.
I'm barely made the cutoff.
But still elite though, right? Nonetheless.
So
And your body was real. You had a lot of issues after CrossFit, right? So I'm just curious, how did you kind of like stumble into the style of training that you do with Homebodies? Because I would imagine you're going from all these barbells, all these complex lifts to like, hey, I'm just doing stuff with a, body weight and maybe like a 15, 25 pound dumbbell and I get an amazing workout from it.
like anything, trial and error.
Yeah.
Trial and error. It was like I pushed my body to the absolute limit. I found out, what it was, what I was capable of, what the limits were, and what it feels like to function as a high performing individual, I guess, and how unrewarding and unfulfilling that is in day to day life. Like
Mm.
a 550-pound deadlift is really no different than a 200-pound deadlift when it comes to things that I need to accomplish in my day to day life. Only one leaves me not feeling totally jacked up where I can put my boots on in the morning and do work. And then the other one makes me wake up the next day and feel like I got hit by a friggin' train.
Mm.
It might be impressive for the highlight reel on Instagram or competitions or whatever. But it doesn't benefit your performance in life. And so that's what I that's the methodology I take into Homebodies, is that, we're all athletes in a sport of life, really. It doesn't matter if you're a single mom taking care of kids or, you got multiple side hustles, whatever. And maybe you never even played sports in your entire life, but your sport is life. You need to be able to perform in day-to-day life. And so your training needs to support that, and not, and make you better for your life, not worse off, not messed up. If you're going to the gym and training so hard that you're completely depleted of all your energy and your muscles are exhausted and you're just tired all day for work, then it's kind of counterproductive, right? Your exercise program should make you feel better.
Yeah. When did you make that mental shift? Was it towards the end of CrossFit where you're just like, man, I could probably feel better if I just dialed it back and focused on simplifying the program and actually feeling good?
Yeah. It was after I completely broke myself down, like mentally, physically, spiritually, just broke myself down, that I decided I needed to find a more sustainable approach to my fitness, one that was, one that left me fulfilled, really. I mean, it wasn't until I reached that breaking point. And I think it all kind of stemmed from doing it for the wrong reasons, really. I was training at such a high capacity, and fitness was such a big part of my life, not for any other reason, but I was like a very pissed off, vengeful dude after the military. I had no purpose, no direction, no idea what I was really doing, but I knew I had a lot of doubters in that space. And my sole, reason for getting out there and getting after it was really more or less so I could just say, fuck you, I made it. And it was terrible. It was awful. So I needed to do that to figure out, hey, fitness can be done in a way that it's fulfilling to me, and it doesn't matter to anybody else. It's not for superficial results.
Is it true that like when you got out of the military, you kind of just felt this calling to go to LA because there were a lot of like fit people out there, and you just took your car, drove out there, and just basically lived on the beach and started just experimenting with all these different classes like TRX, rowing, CrossFit? You were just very curious and tinkering?
That's exactly what happened. I mean, my particular situation getting out of the Marine Corps it's kind of abrupt, in a sense that I didn't really have much of a, what's it called? Like a transitional phase. It was like I had like a 10-day period to like get rid of all of my gear, turn it in, get all my paperwork signed out, and like all my medical procedures, whatever. And then one day they're just like, here's your papers, you're a civilian, get out of here. Like, okay, toss my sea bags in my car. And, towards the tail end of my enlistment, I was kind of getting into fitness, and, it was in my last deployment in Afghanistan. I really started getting some eye-opening experiences with like how important fitness was to my ability to show up and perform in patrols and, execute all the tasks demanded of you as an infantryman. And so fitness was kind of where my head was at that time. So whenever I got out, I was like, what the hell? I'll keep going with fitness. Didn't have a place to live. I knew, like you said, LA's got people with money. It's got fit people. Well, might as well go there and see what happens. That iconic image of Arnold Schwarzenegger out on Muscle Beach, like, well, that's the place to be. And, nothing really prepares you for homelessness like the Marine Corps infantry. You spend all your time sleeping in dirt holes, living in the field. And so it was nothing really, foreign to me going out to the beach. And in fact, it was probably nicer than most of the field ops. There was free showers right there on the boardwalk, and, really good quality food that I can walk to all the time. I sold my car immediately because parking, traffic, everything in LA was just made having a car a real pain in the ass. So I got rid of it, and I was just slumming it out there on Muscle Beach, figuring it out. I don't know, I'm just an observational character. I was watching what everybody else was doing. And then, from there I got enrolled in college. That was a very, very brief stint. I thought, heck, if I want to be a trainer somewhere, if I want to do anything reputable in the fitness world, I need to have some paper that says I'm a smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up for college to use my GI Bill. Academia was not really for me. It wasn't really learning a whole lot. And I was, gathering a little bit of clients here and there with training. And, I was getting exposure to different jobs. Like you said, I was tinkering. I was curious with where I could go. I was more interested in actually developing skills in the craft and then reading from a textbook, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially where I got all of my, I guess, knowledge and fitness, was just exposing myself and doing it in a very unorthodox manner. So like, for example, if I wanted to learn, gymnastics or something, I would learn gymnastics from a break dancer, and I would go about it like that.
How would you go about doing that? Would you just go up to people on the street and just start looking for information, or were people open to that?
I mean, once I got into a cutthroat CrossFit gym, there's a very diverse background of athletes, as CrossFit kind of attracts that diversity of fitness, where you have like rowers and swimmers and dancers and gymnasts and all of this. I saw all of these people as like, experts in their craft. And I was like, that guy rowed crew at an Ivy League school. I want to go learn how to row from him. Like, I'm going to pick his brain. I'm going to see if he'll coach me, train me. That, like, I qualified for a CrossFit competition that was going to involve swimming. I sucked at swimming. Someone's like, oh, that dude swam in college. I'm like, yo,
show
me how to swim. And then I actually,
which is a terrible process,
right?
Swimming sucks.
And I actually joined a children's swimming club out of West Hollywood. And I was out there swimming with like 13-year-old kids, and they were like swimming over the top of me, like drowning me in the deep end. So that's kind of where my fitness came from, I guess.
The tough thing about swimming is it's not like lifting weights or running, or even cycling. Like, the more you grind, you can actually get faster. Swimming is the opposite, where it's like if you keep just grinding in the pool without the right technique, you're going to just get slower and slower. That's what's so hard. It's that technique.
Oh, sure.
And
absolutely.
So much of it comes down to being able to control your breath and actually utilizing like every ounce of your body to get leverage in the water, which is such a foreign concept to people who, don't get in the pool that often.
Right. They just want to, and actually this kind of goes back into the Marine Corps too, where I failed out of the recon indoctrination because I sucked in the pool. Like, I could not swim good enough. And it's because naturally you just have this inclination to want to muscle the water and just do whatever you can, whereas you need to be more calm in the water and controlled.
Yeah. One of the earlier videos that I think I watched of you that really struck a chord with me, I think it was a video maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and you were still living in LA and you had a trip to Austin. And so the whole video was you talking about how you prep your meals for a few days of travel. And one of the things that you said that really struck a chord with me was you said, even when I was homeless, I would still make the priority to eat really good quality food, which it just resonated a lot with me, because you hear so many excuses from people talking about how, food, nutrition, it's too expensive, and they opt for the cheaper shit in the inner aisles of the grocery store. But I was like, here's a guy, even when he had no money or was starting, just getting out of the military, he was so intentional about the food he was eating. He just made that his number one priority. And I feel like that in some ways embodies your ethos of like putting health and wellness first before everything else. So I'd love to just talk to you a little bit more about that too, and your mindset around that.
Well, I think it's a couple things. I mean, to just go right off of, eating healthy while homeless, whenever I was like pension pennies, didn't have a whole lot of money, a lot of what we pay for in terms of food is convenience. Like you said, the inner aisles of the grocery store, that's where all the fast, easy, convenient shit is. Mm-hmm. Stick to the outside. I mean, go into the vegetable aisle and, get that really unappealing, carrot with all the leaves and shit all over it. It's like $1.49. You're going to get a whole bunch of carrots. You're going to have to manipulate it a little bit, get a knife and, go through it. But you're You're not paying for the convenience of your food already being prepared. Even just going through a drive-through and getting fast food, you're still paying some level of convenience for your little hamburger on a bun and cheese and everything being prepared for you. Prepare your own damn food. That's the real simple aspect for me, but also it don't quite take a rocket scientist to understand that everything in your entire life is downstream from how you're feeling, and how you're feeling is it's kind of indicative of how you're fueling your body. We eat, most of us eat, 2, 3, 4, maybe hell 5 times a day. So all of that has a lot of impact on our day-to-day life, far more than just exercise in and of itself. And so even if I was to say I didn't have a whole lot of money or resources or time or anything, I always prioritize how I'm fueling myself first. So, say like a day that I'm totally crammed, I have way too much shit going on, I don't even have time to exercise. I'm not going to try to fit in an exercise and skip over what I'm going to eat. What I'm going to eat for that day is my number one priority, period. I prioritize how I'm going to eat, and then I let the rest of my day roll out from there.
What do those meals usually look like?
My meals are, Remi would call them incredibly boring. They're simple. I've gotten to the point where I can pretty much list all my ingredients, literally the ingredients of what I eat on like both hands. So like in the morning, I'll do eggs, sweet potatoes, and an organ blend and cottage cheese. I have cottage cheese without fail with every single meal, period.
You are the cottage cheese king. Every meal he slaps it on there.
Brady would be so happy. My younger brother loves cottage cheese.
Well, the thing is, several months, like it's probably been about a month ago, I was telling Remi, I was like, there's something going on. There's something weird going on. All of the grocery stores I'm going to right now, they don't have cottage cheese. They're like super low on stock. And I'm like, there's something weird going on. And sure enough, it's because like TikTok is trending with freaking cottage cheese right now. All these influencers are doing like cottage cheese, ice cream, desserts. And so everybody's buying up all the freaking cottage cheese. It's driving me crazy.
You're years ahead of this trend, and you're like, damn, I just want to get the good stuff for myself.
I know.
But so simple meals, cottage cheese on everything.
Yeah. Organ
Blend in the morning with some eggs.
Yeah. I mean, every single meal is built around an animal-based protein. I've kind of come to terms with the fact that like eating within the seasons, but also eating within your environment is a big thing. So like, for example, I'm not eating much fish here at all. Like whenever I was living in California, I was able to get fresh fish from the farmers markets weekly, but I was also not eating a whole lot of red meat there. Here, I eat a crap load of red meat now, and not so much fish, but I also eat a lot of chicken as well. So yeah, every single meal is built around my protein, and then I throw whatever simple veggies I have on hand, mostly seasonable or seasonable. In season.
Yeah.
I eat a lot of sweet potatoes, broccoli, beets, asparagus, cauliflower, berries. I eat a lot of berries. Yep. Like if I find myself in a crunch where I just need to slam some food really quick, I'm getting busy on the farm, it's just handful of berries and like Brazil nuts, and that, does the trick for me.
Nate, I remember a couple years ago, I remember you saying that you didn't eat a lot of red meat when you were in LA. And I'm curious, did you think that red meat maybe didn't sit well with you, or is it more so the fish was just so good in California, you were just prioritizing that?
It was a little bit of both. I really liked the fresh fish, and I liked how light it made me feel. I felt lighter, I'll say. I felt lighter whenever I ate the lean, chickens and turkey and fish, as opposed to like really heavy red meat. And I mean, I wasn't just getting, bottom of the barrel, low quality red meat. I would seek out the good butchers in the area and try to get, good quality beef. But I don't know, it just didn't. It's a Texas thing, and and especially now that I'm raising my own beef, I'm eating a whole lot more of it, and just really appreciating it more than buying it somewhere else, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think, I in a roundabout way, I didn't really answer your question. There was really no sole reason why I wasn't going real crazy on red meat in LA, not health related, I guess.
We had the founder of the Carnivore Bar on our podcast. His name's Philip Meese, and he served overseas and talked all about how the food when you're serving is just terrible. And I'm curious how you deal with just your principle of everything is downstream from how you feel, and how you feel is predicated on what you do to fuel your body, and being overseas, not really having access to that high quality nutrition. Like, how'd you deal with that?
I mean, my mindset around all this has changed and shifted a lot. I mean, we have to look at it from in that regard. So you're in Afghanistan. It don't matter if you're a vegan, a vegetarian, you don't eat this meat, you don't eat that, you have allergies to this or that. You're either going to eat it or you're going to freaking starve. You got to eat to perform. You got to eat to have calories and keep your body moving, period. There is no choice selection. Now, kind of where I got whenever I became a civilian and started competing in CrossFit was, how I fueled myself was going to directly impact how I performed on the competition floor. And I had that choice. I had the ability to make those choices. In the military, you don't have that. And you don't really think about it. You're just eating to give you fuel to keep going. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is of the only importance to you. Just food, water, sleep, and maybe not even all of that. You just need the bare minimum just to keep performing. But I totally understand, where he's coming from. But something cool about that is, like, whenever you're out, operating for weeks and weeks on end, eating MREs, this meal ready to eat, spaceman food, just totally, that stuff's packaged up in a manner that it can just sit in a box for years and years and years and years. And you literally have to, a lot of people don't know this, but you literally have to chew the gum. There's gum that comes in those little MREs, and that's a laxative. You literally have to chew that gum in order to poop it all out, because it just like sits inside your belly because it's so highly processed. But like whenever we would go to the big established bases, whenever we'd like get a shower or we're on our way out, we did have that like hot meal, the chicken or steak or whatever. It was so good. So incredible.
I mean, you going to LA after that experience, you must have had such an appreciation for just good quality food after eating those meals for so long. And I know food waste is something that you're really passionate about. It must have driven you crazy. I think there was a blog that you had sent me, and you were going somewhere, like a breakfast spot, and these models would like load up on these huge plates, and they would eat like a sixth of it and just like throw it in the trash. And for you, you're like, what the fuck? Like, I literally would have killed for this overseas, something like that.
Yeah, like I said, I was observational, and there's this restaurant called Panini Cafe, and I would always see right at like 10 a.m. when it would open up, they had huge breakfast portions, and it was right next to this fashion school. And so all like the skinny, pretty fashion girls would start coming in and ordering up the breakfast platters, just loaded with eggs and greens and potatoes and everything. And I would go in there and I would pay like 75 cents for a cup of coffee. I would sit at the bar and I would just watch them come in and eat. They would have just a couple bites, and then I would walk over to them. And I mean, there were times that people might have thought I was homeless, but I made sure to clean up and have proper manners and everything. And most of the time they'd be like, oh yeah, you can take my food, whatever, it's fine. Yeah. So I'd take all their food and I'd pack it up in a big Tupperware and keep it in my backpack, and I'd have food to eat all day. Unfortunately, eventually the management there, they caught on to what I was doing. They told me to get out, but I mean, they just throw all that stuff away. So yeah. It drove me crazy, but I was just trying to do what I needed to get by.
Yeah. Nate, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to just say, Harry, just, we were watching your video on your morning routine, your 3 a.m. morning routine. And I know that your philosophy for that is like, you basically guard that morning routine with your life. And for the listener, I would just love for you to be able to talk through, just what that routine means to you, and just some of the things that you try to incorporate every single morning to just set yourself up for like the perfect day for Nate.
The perfect day for Nate. Well, I mean, once that sun comes up, now the perfect day for Nate, once that sun comes up, it's like I'm responding to all the needs of all the animals on the farm, whether goat's head stuck in the fence, whether I lost a chicken overnight, whether some of my sheep are out or I bull jumped the fence, whatever. There's always something that's going to demand your immediate attention. And really that could relate to anybody, no matter what you're doing in life. As soon as the sun comes up and the hustle of the day starts, your work day starts, you're going to be responding to everything like on the dot. And so that's why I think that a good morning routine and the timing of it, like I didn't start waking up at 3:30 in the morning because I'm disciplined and you have to wake up at exactly this time. It just, I started waking up that time when I lived in the city and it was loud and chaotic. And so at that time it's quiet, it's dark, there's nothing going on. It allows time to just sit and think and work through all the problems you might have in your head, have some coffee and not be multitasking. So I never, ever, ever touch my phone ever until 9, 10, maybe even noon. I don't touch my phone. I use that time. I like to read, love to read at that time. And generally I'll just read until I have some sort of like creative spark that, leaves me kind of inspired. And then I like to use that time to get my own physical fitness in, which Remi really adopted that methodology as well. And she absolutely loved it, where, she used to find herself slipping down this slippery slope of, I'm just going to check an email really quick. And then before she knows it, she's like 3 hours deep editing videos and just getting drug into work. Whereas it's like, leave the phone out of it. And so now she'll meditate, she'll move her body, she'll get her meals prepared, and she just better set up for the day. And what we call it is putting the horse before the cart. That's what the morning routine is all about, putting the horse before the cart. Because a lot of us, what we do is we put the cart before the horse. And if you put the cart before the horse, which the cart represents all of your life's responsibilities, it doesn't matter if you're a mom or an entrepreneur or whatever. If you start putting all of your responsibilities and tasks and chores and your children and everything first, well, you're the horse. If you don't feed yourself, you don't take care of yourself, you can't pull that cart. You can't do anything with that cart. You have to take care of yourself first so that you're in better shape to take care of your cart, all of your life's responsibilities. So I guess that's the gist of my morning routine. It kind of sets the tone for my day. So, I mean, even just, we started recording at 9:30, right?
Yeah.
I met you guys at 9. I'm like 90 minutes out of here. We back plan a little bit. And so my morning routine started at about 3:30 this morning, give or take. I don't use an alarm clock anymore, but I got about 1 hour worth of time for me to like drink my coffee, just like stare at the wall, think deeply, read a little bit. And then I had to take care of all my animals, get them all set up. It's me like 95 today. So I'd make sure they all had water and they're set good before I come to town. But now I can just focus on being here present with you guys because I know all of that stuff is taken care of.
How much of that morning routine starts the night before for you?
Well, I would almost say dang near my entire day is setting me up for my morning routine now. As strange as that sounds, like for example, like whenever I'm doing my evening chores now, I have a barrel sauna out at the ranch. And so when I'm doing my evening chores, I'm gathering up some sticks and whatnot, and I start a fire and I get my barrel sauna heating up really good while I'm doing my evening chores. That's probably around about 5. And so my barrel sauna will be really good and hot by the time I'm done taking care of all the animals. And then, so Remi and I will pop into the sauna, get a really good sweat, and then we'll jump into the ice bath. Really calms you down, sets the tone to like start winding down for the evening, have a nice light dinner, and we're ready to go to bed when the sun's going down.
This sounds stupid, but it's actually insane how big of an impact just not touching your phone for the first few hours of the day actually is. And fully self-admittedly, like a lot of our business is on social media, and I use my phone alarm, which is probably the big issue. I keep the phone right by the bed, and there's so many days where I wake up and I'm like, oh, let me check on this thing or that thing. And then 20 minutes of scrolling later, that dopamine hit, it sets you up not to have the best possible day. So just doing that one thing of like keeping your phone out of the room and doing all your shit before you actually get on your phone. It's like, I mean, you just inspired us to be able to start doing that.
I like acronyms, and I think that write up I did, I used a silly acronym based out of the Marine Corps. It's like a weapons safety rule acronym where it's treat, never, keep, keep. It's treat every weapon as if it were loaded, never point your weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot, keep your weapon on safe until you intend to fire, and whatever. In terms of the morning routine, I was like, treat yourself. Your morning routine is like you're treating yourself. It's important for you. Gosh darn it, I wish I could remember that. And like never busy your thoughts with your tasks of the day while the morning dew is still wet. There's some really goofy shit that I was reading at that time that I was inspired by. But yeah, definitely farming and ranching too. I've totally minimized the amount of like technology that I'm using, but I'll tell you this, whenever I do use technology, I find myself in my little bits and spurts far more productive. So like, back in LA when we were grinding and hustling like crazy on the computer all the time, we'd spend 8 to 10 hours on a computer. How much of that was really all that productive? I don't freaking know. But now I might get on the computer maybe an hour every 3 days. But that 1 hour that I'm on the computer, it's like focused and like in the zone, not distracted at all.
Targeted.
Yep.
Did you ever struggle with having your phone like interrupting your morning routine? Because I heard you say something about a mental trick that you would play with yourself in the sauna. You would play like a little game with yourself to make you stay in the sauna longer. And something that I've had experience with the phone in particular, a mental trick, is just not even ever letting it enter the bedroom. And of course, I've not been perfect with that, but recently I've been trying to do it more and more. And I think that's like a good place to start when it comes to just like not touching it in the morning, because then it's just out of your way. It's not within arm's reach. So curious, did you ever have an issue with it?
It's interesting because like you just said, your alarm goes off first thing in the morning. Like how many of us have to use our phones for an alarm? Like basically all of us. I think my get around of it is that I don't use an alarm. I simply have not had to use an alarm in so long that I don't even need my phone there. My eyes wake up and like I just stand up and get out of bed because I'm excited to get up every day. Most of the time, like you can't keep me in bed. Like when my eyes open up, I'm ready to go. Like I'm excited to start up my espresso machine, make some espresso and start my day. So I don't need an alarm. So I've never had that problem with like reaching for my phone to even like stop my alarm or anything. Cause as soon as you touch it, like you said, it's like you're slipping down that rabbit hole. You snooze your alarm and then, oh, you got a text message from someone. Oh, I'm going to check that text message really quick. Hey, can you send me that email? Oh yeah, I'll do that email really quick. Go into your emails. Oh, you got this special offer promo. Oh, I'm going to click on that. Oh, I got an Instagram notification. Oh, DMs. Whoa, what's going on here? Oh my God, did you see they posted that? And it's like
45 minutes later. Right. Yeah.
Oh, wait, is that my phone? Please tell me. Oh,
no.
Oh my God.
That's actually classic.
Yeah.
Throw that thing out.
Yeah.
So you also, you referenced it before. You don't have a normal style of reading like most people. It seems like you don't read cover to cover. I've heard you say you pick something up and then you just kind of read until something pops. So maybe we could talk about that too, because I love that.
Well, and actually it started in school too. I was a terrible, terrible student. I basically struggled just to make D's. If a teacher was reading in chapter 1 or 2, I was reading in chapter 9 or 10. It was not because I was on like an accelerated learning program by any means whatsoever. It was just the fact that I was not interested in what they were talking about. I was going to flip until I found something interesting that I was going to read about, or I was going to draw pictures. Either way. So the same goes with reading. I would say a lot of us read. Why do most people read books nowadays?
Just to tell their friends that they read a book.
Well, there's that, but just about every damn book on the market now is about how to be successful, how to make more money, and like how to be happy. And like every single, like all the books are self-help books these days, and
Yes.
they all sound exactly the same to me. So I like to pick up old philosophy books. Remi always makes fun of me. Like right now I'm reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, and sometimes like it's a lot of fun to read, but most of it is not written, like you said, in a cover to cover format. Their thoughts were so sporadic and all over the place. It was just written down. Or like Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, like they did not write a cover to cover story to be read in that fashion. So I just flip open a book and I'll just like page. And, you know, some days I'm really interested in learning or reading about love. Some days I'm interested in reading about nature or death or ego. And, you know, if I see something that speaks to me right then and there, I stop and I just start reading, and I toss a little dog ear in the page, and I save it for later. And my desk is kind of it kind of shows that, because I just got stacks of books all over the place that really don't correspond with one another.
Mm-hmm. You got to send Nate some Wendell Berry. He'd probably.
I mean, he's read Unsettling of America.
Oh, go look in my bag.
Is that what you're okay?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Because that's you love him.
Yeah.
So.
I was gonna ask if there's any author that stands out to you in terms of just a mind that you resonate with. It's so cool to be able to tap back into history and see and try to understand where people are and were and what they were living through. And I think us three probably appreciate it, just being able to take their experience and try to apply it to modern life.
Wendell Berry,
yeah.
Like you said, Wendell Berry he's incredible. And I mean, I think that we're kind of seeing it firsthand. I think that farm and agriculture, slow down life, I think that it's kind of making a comeback. It's starting to become the cool thing. I think that hustle city culture is not that cool anymore. I mean, the people who really, really make it and go, what they really, the end goal for them is like settling down, quieting down, slowing down, like, you know, becoming more connected to something, growing spiritually, because a lot of people get burnt out. And, you know, you can progress as a society so far until you got to like swing back to the baseline, you know? And that's why I think I like Wendell Berry a lot. And he was a very like controversial thinker in that whole area.
Is there anyone that you've read that you wish you could have a conversation with?
Ralph Waldo Emerson. Yeah.
Why him?
Again, he was just a very controversial individual, and his writing style was like very like connecting with nature and self-reliance. And right now that's kind of where I'm at. It's like I'm connecting with nature, not just in all the good things that nature has to offer, but nature is also a cruel little bitch. And self-reliance is awesome, and freedom is awesome, but all of the responsibilities that come with that can sometimes be really heavy and wear you down. But you just gotta like, you gotta know why you're doing it. And I think that he would really dug into that. Dostoevsky as well. I think he was a very good example of that. He was more on the forefront of noticing all of the issues that could come from abundance and too much progression. He was like kind of sounding the flag back in the freaking like early 1900s.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So you've touched on nature and animals a few times, and for the listener, they could probably allude to this, but the last 2 years you've thrown yourself head first into ranching. You and Remi moved out of LA. You're now in Dripping Springs, Texas, at Pontious Ranches. What was that feeling like, maybe doing some of this reading or realizing that you connected really well with nature, but you're kind of in this concrete jungle of LA and there's a lot of materialism and stuff like that? Did you kind of just feel like you were a square peg in a round hole out there?
Absolutely. I spent all of my time in the city. You put it perfectly. I spent all of my time in the city trying to fucking jam that square peg into a round hole by any means necessary. And, you know, I grinded and I hustled. I had every every job you could literally ever imagine. But you know, you can only hustle so long. And you know, Rami and I got to a point where we wanted to start a family and slow it down. And like, I guess that's where the farming comes in. I want to be able to provide for the family and not like living in the city. You don't even realize how much of your freedoms that you sacrifice for the luxuries of, you know, fitting yourself into this nicely packaged society, like a very comfortable living society. You know, we have a lot of hardships and a lot of, you know, tough stuff, like struggles that we got to overcome out in the country, especially her coming from the city her entire life. Like whenever we had no power and no running water and we are using a 5-gallon bucket to dump water down the toilet to flush the toilet and everything, like that was really eye-opening for her. But at the same time, we have all of the greatest freedoms. So I guess, you know, tying back into what I was saying earlier, with all the freedoms comes a whole heck of a lot of responsibilities. So it's a much more, it's a healthier balancing act than living in the city, I think. I mean, even just like this morning driving in, it seems like everybody's in this rat race, driving as fast as they can into this city to crowd into like one tiny little block. It's just like a very congested area.
You mentioned before before we hit record that you were raising chickens in LA in your front yard, and there were two groups of people in your neighborhood: those that loved getting the eggs and those that hated getting them. And I'm sure it's been an interesting transition for you being here, where you know everyone around you is probably doing a similar thing to you. But I'd be interested in learning more about that time period of your life where you were having these thoughts about maybe wanting to grow your own food more and getting more connected with that. Like, what was the impetus for really trying to take that step and do more of that food raising process yourself?
I guess the whole thing is just taking matters into my own hands to getting the most high quality food that I possibly can. I mean, I remember the very like of our very first several dates with Remi, like our big passion together was cooking really good meals, and we ate a lot of vegetables. And she had a tiny little yard, and to this day, I still can't figure out why I did it. But like on our first several dates, I was just like, "Can I go dig a hole out in your yard?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And I took all the leftover compost, like vegetable scraps and stuff, and I just like buried it in the dirt and used a hoe and like broke it all down. I created like a little compost pile. You know, months and months go by later, and we went and bought some like strawberries and some tomatoes and whatnot, and I planted them right in that compost. And they popped right up, and we started eating those. And you know, one thing led to another. We're like living in a subdivision right in LA. Talk about Beverly Hillbillies. That was me. I constructed a little coop. I did all my research. I'm like, as long as I don't have a rooster, I should be able to have some chickens. I have to have the chickens so far away from the sidewalk. I like got a tape measure out, and I measure from the sidewalk. It's got to be so far away from the house. They like their coop's got to be clean, so it's not like there's no odor or anything. So I'm gonna get 4 hens. So I went and got 4 hens, and you know, no problems. I wasn't bothering anybody. They were very quiet. You wouldn't even know that they existed. And then, like you said, I was giving eggs to my neighbors. They were very appreciative. They loved it. They named the chickens. And so I had it planned out where before the sun would go down, I would let the chickens out of their coop for about 30 minutes right before the sun went down. Because when that sun goes down, the chickens, they know to go back to roost. So I'd open up the coop. The chickens would just run the whole yard and graze and peck and just run around and free roam before they went into roost. But somebody in the neighborhood was just not thrilled about us having chickens. You're not supposed to have chickens in the city. You're not allowed to. And so she started calling all the authorities. They sent freaking everybody from the LAPD to animal control. They sent everybody. And finally, the only thing that they could get me on was like unpermitted construction in a historic zoning preservation code, where I'd construction of a chicken coop essentially, and they fined me several thousands of dollars. So then I had to get rid of my chickens, and I was just kind of over the whole city thing.
So that was part of the impetus to just get to Texas.
Well, yeah, that, and like I said, Remi and I we're ready to start that further journey
Next
of our
chapter.
relationship and everything. And I mean, maybe this is not okay to say, but I don't think that the cities are the greatest place to raise a kid. I mean, I think about the way that I was raised in the country, and I wasn't the smartest kid, but I learned a decent deal about work ethic and, you know, what, what a hard day's work is like and how to earn something. And so I think that's what living in the country is all about. And kids should be able to climb trees, scratch up their knees, and get outside in nature and not be like in a box, or so to speak.
Yeah. I remember when I lived in New York for a couple of years, I worked right downtown, like near Tribeca, and I would walk back from work to take the subway back home, and I would pass these Little League fields for the kids that were living in the city. And there was no dirt, there was no grass, it was just AstroTurf. And you just think about the existence of a lot of these kids that are in the city. And like, there are a lot of amazing parts of the city, don't get me wrong. There's energy, there's excitement, but I'm like, these kids don't even have, like, they're not even gonna grow up with dirt or grass or like any of this stuff that we did, like being from the suburbs of Illinois or, Virginia or New Jersey. It's just really interesting to think about that. And obviously you'd want that for your kids too.
Was there a reason why you guys chose Texas?
Well, we actually visited Tennessee first. We wanted land, we wanted a farm and a ranch, and Texas fit Remi better than Tennessee. Tennessee was very green and lush, and honestly, where we live now is kind of like the perfect balance for her, because she's close enough to Austin where she can get her like city fix. Although, whenever we first started, she would come to the city more, but now she's coming to the city less and less and less. She's like really embracing the farm and ranch more and more the more time we're here. So the setup of where we're at in Dripping Springs was kind of perfect, because we're just far enough away from the city where we have a good piece of land where I can raise a substantial amount of animals and have some peace and quiet, but she's still within touching distance of the city. So that kind of worked out, and just I guess where we wound up. I mean, we found the perfect property. It was an old Longhorn working ranch, but the house was the old ranch home that got completely redone by this just incredible craftsman of a single man and his wife. They built that and they redid the entire home all by themselves. It wasn't like a turnover or anything. So just everything was just so well done on this home, and it has all the existing infrastructure from this old working ranch from the 1960s. So everything is all beaten down and worked and used, but I can use it all, which that's one of the biggest struggles that a lot of people get with, if you were to, it's becoming really appealing to get out of the city and into a farm. So this is one great advantage that I had, was I already had a lot of the infrastructure in place ready to go, whereas it takes a lot of capital to start farming. It really, really does. It's not easy.
Nate, as a first gen rancher, what do you even do to like try and learn some of this stuff? Are there courses? Are there people as a part of it? I'm sure trial and error, like you said, is probably part of it too, but how did you really get started?
It's a lot of it's trial and error. I mean, I grew up farming and ranching in Illinois. We did mostly a lot of row crops. We grew our own hay. We raised cows, horses, goats, pigs. I mean, just I want to say my family, honestly, from the outlook is kind of like an Amish family, kind of. we actually do a lot of business with the Amish at the sale barns where I'm from.
We're very pro Amish on this podcast, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean
they're awesome.
It's funny because I used to spend a lot of time at the sale barns as a kid, and I would look at them and I'm like, man, they're kind of strange. But now I'm like, they got it figured out.
Yeah.
They're healthy, they're healthy in every single regard, and they're happy. They're incredibly happy. They got something figured out.
Raw milk, riding horse bareback, good life.
No cell phones in the morning.
No cell phones in the morning.
And the funny thing is, actually, a couple of them kids where I was raised, they were incredible athletes. But the funny thing is, they didn't play sports. Like, and that's got to be such an incredible, I guess feeling, knowing that you could walk out on any football field, soccer field, baseball field, walk out on the track and just, and they would do it in their boots too.
Yeah.
They'd smoke a quarter mile in their boots and just not be on the competitive team just because you've got more important things to tend to on the farm. Anyways, I got a little sidetracked there. So I grew up farming and ranching in Illinois, but a lot of what I'm starting to learn is context. A lot of what we did in Illinois does not work here. A lot of the animal species do not work here. A lot of the methods do not work. And we did a lot more of like conventional farming up there, whereas now I'm doing a little bit more of like a regenerative approach. And so I'm learning a lot every single day. I obviously I read a lot, but a lot of what I use just comes from patience and just observation, watching all my animals, figuring out what's going good and what's not working, what failed miserably. I'm going to try to not replicate that.
A lot of people that we've had on the podcast who are getting into this sort of creating your own food, just going down the path of creating their own food, they'll go to seminars and be around a lot of other people who are trying to do the same thing. Was that similar for your case, or did you kind of just dive in and start experimenting and tinkering?
I wouldn't say I went to seminars, but I immediately jumped right into the farmers markets, and I started getting connected with the people that I was going to be getting my food from, and picking their brains week after week after week after week and seeing what was going on. And, first coming out of the city and getting out here, obviously, what does everybody want to get right away whenever they start a farm? They start raising livestock. The first thing you want to be a cattleman. You want to get cows. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to get cows. I had 20 acres. I had 20 acres to start. I was like, I'm going to stock 6 cows. Now this was at the very front end of this drought that we were just in. And, so I immediately got 6 cows. I put them on my 20 acres, and I got to talking to my one buddy that was down in South Texas. And he's like, you don't want to get cows. Do not get cows. He's like, you do not have enough land for cows. I'm like, 20 acres is a lot of land. Sure enough, I kid you not, probably not 3 weeks later, all 6 of them cows had ate down all 20 acres of my pasture. Now, so remember what I said was that property that we bought was an old working cattle ranch. So all of those pastures around me had, since the 60s, had just been trampled by cows, year after year after year after year. And so the soil quality on my ranch is just piss poor, to say the least. It's terrible. I have invasive. Well, so what the worst thing that happened about it was, for all those years, all those decades, all those cows ran those pastures, and then it just sat dormant for like 10 years and just totally grew over with invasive plant species because the soil was in such bad quality. So when I got in, the soil was in bad quality. I had nothing but brush, and cows ain't going to thrive on that crummy grass. They need good grass. So I immediately got out of my cows, and I had to, switch my approach really quickly. What eats all the brush and invasive plant species? Goats. So then I bought a bunch of goats, and I started using goats to, eat all the brush and whatnot. Goats are a real pain in the butt. Get to that later, but they did the job. And so it was at that point that I was like starting to observe and look around, like, okay, this is what works. That's what did not work. And I guess this approach that I'm taking now is, I guess, regenerative in a sense. I'm not going to be out there spraying fertilizers and insecticides and chemicals and a bunch of stuff. Like, I want to make my animals work for me and create a resilient system here on the ranch and raise my own food, and it's going to take a lot of patience to do that and a lot of observation. And so, starting with them goats, then from there I started branching out and meeting some of the ranchers around me. And of course, they're all 60, 65, some of them about 70. That's like the common thing around here. There's not a whole lot of younger generations doing this. And so now I'm like a little wandering, pestering dog to some of these guys. Like I'm following them around, trying to help them as much as I can, like picking their brain, trying to learn as much as I can from them. You can pick up a textbook all you want, but they're the ones who have that real knowledge. They've seen the things that happen whenever you do things right and wrong. So that's where I'm trying to learn as much as I can, is like hanging out with the old ranchers around me.
It's almost like with CrossFit, you would go seek out like a swimmer or a rower and just pester them. It's kind of like the same thing. It's pretty interesting, those parallels.
I guess.
How do those 60 and 70-year-old older multi-generational Texans, how do they feel about like a LA transplant first gen guy getting into ranching?
Well, it's actually funny because one of the older guys there, he owns about several thousand acres right around me. Like he runs cows all around me. He's a big deal where I'm at. He's like the guy. And he's real grumpy old guy. Like don't mess around with this. He's like old school cowboy, and he's like the perfect type of person that would hate someone like me. Like they just hear, oh, there's some people from LA that just moved to the old Longhorn Ranch over there, and they're probably going to mess everything up. But very early on, so his stockyard is right next to my pasture. And so that's where all his cows come in, and they go to the barn to the sorting pens, and that's where their water and minerals and everything are. Anyway, very early on, I seen a couple of his bulls getting into it, and a little bit later on, I saw some hooves poking up out of the water trough. And so them water troughs, they got these big metal fences splitting them in half. And so that one of them bull calves had gotten wedged down in that water trough, and he was drowning. He had those prongs like stuck through him. He's bleeding, and he like barely had his head out of the water, and he was drowning. Now, as everybody in Texas knows, you don't go on to somebody else's property ever out here. It's a good way to get shot.
Yeah.
And so this old man, he's got this, I'll say he's like a old school proper like Arkansas hillbilly that lives in his barn, and he's supposed to be tending to them animals. He's the type of guy who wears like the bib overalls with no shirt on. He's got his boots tucked in his pants tucked in his boots. He's always carrying a shotgun around. Yeah. He's got a beer in his hand. So I know he lives in that barn, and I'd see that cow drowning, and I'm like hollering for him, trying to like help that cow, and he's not coming out. So I'm just like, screw it. I know it ain't right, but I jumped the fence and I went into that cow pen, and I started cutting the wires and getting that cow out. Sure enough, here he came, the old hillbilly, cocked his gun and had a gun pretty much to my head. And I was just like, I mean, this ain't the first time I've had guns pointed at me. Yeah. Just chill out. I'm just trying to help this cow. One thing leads to another. He hates me, obviously, because I'm the neighbor, and he just tells me to get out of there. But that is my segue into meeting the old rancher whose cows it actually was. He called me personally on the phone. He's like, what are you thinking going on to my cow pasture like that? And I was like, I was just trying to help that bull out. I know it ain't right. I apologize. And he kind of took me in. He was like, I kind of like what you're doing around here. He's like, you got sheep and goats, and you're raising cows, and you don't give a damn about hopping people's fences to save a cow. Oh, okay. You're all right. So that was kind of, I guess, I got tattoos on my hand, up my neck and everything. Yeah. I'm not exactly the role model for that type of person, I guess, but he's let me stick around, and he's been I've learned a whole lot from him since.
Have you gotten any new tattoos since you've been out in Dripping Springs?
I ain't had time to hardly pick my nose with how much work the ranch gives me. So now I haven't gotten any more tattoos.
I heard you talking about the tattoos, and I was interested in learning a little bit more about them. So you've done some of the actual drawing for some of them. Is that like a long thing that you've done, the drawing and creative process of just, putting art together? I think that's like a very interesting thing to do, like be able to have art that you've created that gets put on your body. I don't think a whole lot of people can say that.
Well, I'll tell you, for a long time, like I said earlier, I was a real pissed off idiot. I didn't really know how to express feelings or even write or anything, and I wasn't really reading much. So drawing was my means of communication, I guess. And then so a lot of my tattoos at some point in my life were more or less like red flags, like keep your distance. Like, I mean, I have heartthrob tattooed across my neck. It's kind of like most girls that look at that be like, stay away from him. And that was like, yes, you should stay away from me. Like, so drawing was a big way for me to, I guess, express my feelings after the Marine Corps. And then I don't know, I guess I think after I met Remi, I got more away from drawing and more into writing. So now I write a lot more, I guess, and that goes perfectly in line with why I haven't gotten any more tattoos, because I'm not really drawing. And that was like a creative process for me in the city. I had, I guess, a little bit more spare time. Now every ounce of my creativity is spent now solving problems on the farm, because like every single intricate problem on the farm requires creativity. Industrial farming, everything is just like animal, pen, water, food, animal, pen, water, food. When you start mixing all of these different species the way that I do, like every single problem that arises, like it's like a big a big math equation, or like art in a way. Like I have to creatively solve these problems. So I guess I don't really draw anymore.
You have other outlets for it.
Exactly.
It's interesting how that can move from one thing to the next.
Yeah. It's amazing too how when you fill your day with really difficult things that you love, which clearly you love it, it's like your mind almost doesn't have time to race or have like negative thoughts the way that it normally would, because you're just constantly busy just doing the shit that you love. That's got to be a really cool feeling for you to be like, damn, I've arrived. I really love what I do.
Yeah. It is, and I get to kind of experience it too with some of my good friends coming to visit from the city, like that I used to do CrossFit with. They totally get it. We'll just like throw a backpack on with all the tools, and we'll just walk the fence line and like fix the fence. And it's like that one task in front of you, just like the wire, your hands, the pliers. You're just like sitting on the ground. This one task just fully consumes you in this moment right now. There's no outside noise. It's very therapeutic in a way, farming. Obviously it comes with a lot of stress. It's demanding. There's a lot of responsibilities, but at the same time it is very, very therapeutic.
Does it excite you to think about raising your family out there when that time comes?
Absolutely. I mean, it is coming. It is coming. And yeah, I look forward to that. I think it's a good environment to teach good lessons, I guess. And we got to experience a little bit of that with one of Remi's, good friends brought her little boys out, and man, just what a treat to just watch. It's just so fun to just like sit back and watch kids be kids, because they don't know what is valuable and what is not valuable by our standards. You put a kid out and they'll just be like playing in a dirt pile or something. You're like, well, that's something that's truly valuable. Look at them occupy themselves with that. So you can learn, heck, we can learn a lot from kids by putting them in an environment like that. It's cool, and watching them like interact with animals, and some of the questions that they asked, like whenever they're in these environments with the animals, like heck, it makes me use my brain. It's like, why do those cows have saggy necks? Or why does your pig have those wattles on their chin? Why do these eggs, or why do your chickens lay different color eggs? I'm like, man, like I need to start thinking how to answer questions like this. It's fun.
It probably also helps you appreciate how much you've learned in just a short 2-year period too.
Definitely. 100%.
What is the feeling like, being confronted with the death of animals on like a semi-regular basis, I would imagine?
Well, actually just yesterday was one of the worst days that I'd had in a long time. I lost 3 lambs in one day. And it's tough because you're holding your failure, and your failures are death. So in one regard, you tend to learn things really quickly when the stakes are so damn high. You want to prevent that from happening. But at the same time, like I was saying a little bit earlier, you have to get, I'm having to start to get to a point where I have to learn what is in my control and what is not in my control in terms of nature. Nature comes in cycles. Cycles comes with life and death. There is no life without death.
Mm-hmm.
And, it does happen. The hardest parts for me to grapple with are that death. Is it my fault? Is there more that I could have done? Is there more that I should be doing? If I'm trying to create resilient animals, healthy, thriving ecosystems, I can't be out there babying and nurturing these animals like crazy. But at the same time, it does not feel good to have a dead animal and know that you could have done more, or wonder if you should have done more, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I answered your question at all, but it's...
Oh, you did.
It certainly makes you appreciate life a whole lot more. I'll say that. It makes you appreciate the really good days. It makes you appreciate the little moments a whole lot more whenever you have stuff like that happen.
Well, the phases of your life are so interesting where, you're overseas and then you come back, you go to LA, which is probably a pretty sterile place for you in contrast to what you saw overseas. And then you come back here and it's probably, maybe, I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but maybe feels like home because you're like more in touch with this natural part of who you actually are.
Absolutely. I mean, I struggled a whole lot living in the city. I think you actually used a perfect word. It's sterile. The sterile environment of a city. And the city is probably the worst possible place that a veteran, I guess with my experience, a combat veteran coming fresh out of a combat deployment, going straight into a city is probably the absolute worst place that you could put that individual, because it's just it's sterile, but at the same time it's chaotic, and at the same time you're battling with this meaninglessness of your now life in this sterile, chaotic condition, like congested condition. Farming and ranching, it's much more peaceful. Your purpose, your responsibilities are the animals, tending to the farm, and you have a very tangible result to go off of. It's life or death, I guess, kind of just like war. So it is very familiar in a way.
Do you feel like either, Remi or any of your close friends or family has like noticed any differences or changes in your personality over the last 2 years since being out in Texas?
I'd reckon so. Yeah. I mean, like my 2 good buddies, from the city there that I used to CrossFit with, actually a couple of them, they've all said, the same thing. I was a raging prick. I was always just stressed and overwhelmed and pissed off and disgruntled. I was a very vengeful asshole in the city. I was very focused and determined, but I was just not a very pleasant individual to be around. That was just kind of my personality. I was very cutthroat and like in your face. But I think now I've been able to just calm down my thoughts, My memories are far more clear. It's like those little moments of solitude that you used to really grasp for in a chaotic city. They kind of last forever in the city, or in the country, excuse me. It's a great way to really be able to think more clearly, I guess, slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nate, it's been an amazing conversation. I feel like we've touched on a lot of different things, and our audience is going to love this. Just diving into food production, regenerative agriculture, but your backstory itself is just incredibly powerful, and I know our audience is going to love it. So thanks for coming in today, and just appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come join us in Austin.
Yeah, y'all have to come out and see the ranch sometime soon. I appreciate it.
If you need us to put us to work, let us know. Always around.
Shoot.
Might regret that. No, kidding. Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.